Hey guys, welcome to finally a new episode of my replay analysis series. I'm sorry for being gone for so long. The short version is I was making all my videos at college, came home, have limited internet there, so I couldn't make videos there. And so now I've moved to Chicago, where I do have internet finally, so now I can start making these for you guys again. So let's get back into it. I'm using some old replays because I think this guy has actually changed his name to Duck in the time I've been gone, I'm pretty sure. But let's go into Back-to-Back by Gargon555. It's a back-to-back opener, as the replay name might suggest. This looks like a Sambo split cap, so let's get into this. So, for the opener here, he does this little spin because you kind of have to position yourself to go towards you, because it's really hard to do a backwards facing opener unless you're like doing manipulation, or I guess you can do like a hook kick or a backhand or something, but it's a lot easier if you turn yourself around first, and he's shown that here. And so at first this hand spin here is really nice. A lot of people would have a problem with that ghost that he does with his arm right there. You see how his arm goes through his leg. I don't think it's too bad, but I think he could have easily gotten rid of that and saved a lot of criticism. And then he does it again with his other leg here because he contracted both legs. And that one I have a lot more of a problem with than the one with the arm, because it's like that's sort of a realism sort of kick up to... Shut up, cat. It's a realism sort of kick up to a jump. So you want to try and keep that as realistic as possible. And in real life, you're not really going to be kicking through your own leg. But it's a nice little spin opener and goes right into that split kick, which I do like a lot. That split kick, really powerful. He has a good setup to it. And I like how he lands, too. Like, he just sort of leaves that leg out there and does a little half spin in the air. But he lands in a really good way that he can follow up for it really well. My only problem is that the follow-up, I feel like, could have been better. Maybe he was going for more of a realism approach, but I would have liked for him to get a lot more power out of that kick. I feel like it looks like what he did is he extended his knee and then sort of relaxed it as soon as he was able to could get off the ground. But I would have liked for him to use that kick for a little bit more of a powerful spin momentum rather than just to get himself to stand up. But then he goes into a spin. He does use the spin very well, though, and gets a nice little foot spin in there, and then crouches down and gets that punch decap. I personally really don't like dismemberments when Yuka's already on the ground like that. I feel like it's just... I guess it's kind of inevitable when you're doing a Sambo replay, but I really like to hit Yuka when he's in the air. So like maybe if he had gotten a hit on this ass piece here, or maybe if he had like lifted the torso piece up and then hit it, I would have liked it more. And also, I don't really like how he sort of sets into a pose before he does that punch. I feel like it doesn't flow that well. Like, he just drops his leg and then he turns his chest for that punch. I would have really preferred it if he had done more of a fluid motion. Like, maybe he had extended his left hip once he got into this position, so then once he punches, he just sort of stands up instead of just staying in that position after the punch. I think that would have been a lot better, because then it's more like a fluid motion, and he goes, so he punches, and then he extends his left hip here, maybe relaxes this knee, and then turns around and stands up after it, and he uses the momentum from the punch to sort of spin himself around, but he just sort of stays there, which I'm not a fan of. And also, he uses like his left arm to gain balance in that pose. So I would have preferred him to have more of a two-point balance rather than the 3-point balance that he goes for here. But overall, it's a pretty solid split cap. There's not too much wrong with it. It's just that there's not really anything special about it, and a lot of people have made replays like this before. Our next replay is going to be Answer by HittyPie. I know it says Swag24 up there, but I think that was just a whip name. The replay sent me said Answer. So let's take a look at this one. It's a Sambo Madman sort of replay, and I quite like it. So let's get into this. So he starts off going into this sort of tippy-toe opener, which I think was really good. Like it's a really neat looking opener. Like the toe thing that he has going on here, I think looks pretty cool. And he also sort of he uses it to really good effect. He like pushes off the ground and uses his left knee to push off really well, and uses the extended toes of his right leg to start off the spin. And then he turns around and gets a really nice hip kick in there, and then which he easily lands in and transitions into another kick. I think it looks like what he was trying to do was use his left hand for a punch there, but then he sort of edited it out. And I'm sure he has a good reason for that, but the way it looks, I really wish that he had landed a punch with his right arm there and like gotten an arm DM or something, because I feel like that would have been even cooler, because you get the 3 hits instead of 2. More is generally better when you're making a madman. But he whiffs the right arm punch and then instead uses that to wind up for this right leg kick. And interesting, it doesn't look like he used his chest much for this kick at all. Like, you can see that his chest is almost completely turned to the left here. And normally when you're doing a kick with your right leg like that, you want to do the right rotating chest. But he instead rotates his chest after the kick instead of before it. So I'm actually kind of impressed that he managed to get that much power on that kick and then uses that to finish the motion. But one downside of this is that the kick doesn't look as powerful as it could, especially since he extends it and then immediately relaxes it. So it looks like his knee sort of folds with the kick, and you don't want that. You want to look like you have some power with what you're doing, and especially since he doesn't really follow it up with anything, so he doesn't really have the excuse of like, oh, I didn't want to kick Yuke away or into a bad position, because he goes away and then sets up for the spin over here anyway. So I don't think there's really any excuse for him not fully extending his knee there, because I don't think it would have seriously messed up his spin either, because he still has his right rotating chest stored. So I think that was sort of a mistake on his part. I think he could have easily left his knee extended for that kick. It would have looked a lot better. But he brings the leg around after the kick. Also, I want to note that you can see his head is a little bit red there. You don't want that. He bonked his head at some point in there on his hand right there, and you want to avoid that as much as possible. You never want to get your head touched. It just looks ugly. I think anyone can agree that you don't want head touches. But he lands in this position, and then it does a nice sort of, I don't think that's technically a cork. I'm not really a realism guy, but I'm pretty sure that's not technically a cork, but it's kind of a cork-ish sort of thing. And then he sort of lands in a pose. And oh, this is really good to show what I meant when I was talking about Gargon's replay back there. You see how he lands and then does that punch, but then he sort of follows it up with another motion and gets that decap hit. And I really like that instead of just sitting there with the punch, because you use the momentum from the punch, because it's sort of a grazing punch. You can see how it gets both the elbow and the pec DM. So it's sort of a grazing punch, so you can use that as momentum to follow it up, which he does. I don't like the long break that he has to take in between the second and third hits of this replay. I think it's kind of unavoidable, seeing as just the momentum that he had set up for himself, but you really want to try and keep the time in between your dismemberments as low as possible. You really want your madmen to be combo-esque rather than sort of hit him a little bit, dance around, hit him another little bit. Another thing is that he doesn't extend his knee fully on that last kick either, which I would have really liked to see him do, because fully extended knees, like I said, are pretty much always good after a forward-facing kick like that. Also, in that spin, you can see that he has a lot more momentum starting out, and that sort of slows down a bit. So I think he could have made that a little bit better in that case. The pose is really nice, though. I do like that. So overall, it's a pretty good Sambo Madman, but there are definitely some things that he could have done to improve it. Our next replay is going to come from Icon, a machine for pigs. This guy, I'm pretty sure he's even in Ormo. He's been around for longer than most of the people I showcase on the show, but that just means it's going to be a good replay. So let's go into it. So this is a manipulation madman sort of thing. Manipulation into a couple hits there and into a pose. So let's take a look at this. So it starts off with, I'm pretty sure this is a lilac opener. I think it might be, but I'm not sure. But I mean, I don't really mind people using other people's openers at all. Like, I know a lot of people have a stigma against it, but for the longest time, I just stole openers for every single replay I made. So I don't think it's that big of a deal, as long as you just only use the opener. So he sets up this manipulation really well. He hits him under the shoulder there, and then uses his other arm very quickly to get a really nice spin started. So he's already started off with a pretty good spin here and pretty quickly, which is good. You want to get as much spin as possible. And then he gets a nice little tap with his left leg there. A lot of times in manipulations, it doesn't even really matter if you actually start him going that much faster. Like that left leg kick, it probably didn't do much, but it's good to have that in there anyway, just to make it look like you're doing something. But that knee hit into chest hit probably did a lot more. And also, I think that's a really nice move he did there. The knee into chest thing, that got a lot of speed added to this manipulation, and it worked really well. So really kudos to that one. One problem I do have with his movement here is how you'll see here he sort of extends his knee and then contracts it right there. And I feel like he could have made that movement a lot smoother, and he also relaxes it right there too. So there's probably some editing there that could have been done to make that movement a little bit more fluid. But then he sets up that manipulation really well. Then he comes in and gets a nice 2DM punch on the pecs there. That went really fast. Let me see if the speedometer's working. Oh no. But that's a really fast punch. Gets both those pecs. Then transitions into a grab. And I like that one, really. I said before that I don't like when you do a punch into a grab, but I think he uses it really well here, because that punch is really strong and the grab is really useful, and he immediately uses it for this really big core. This is a 4DM. He gets the glute plus the double core, and a double core hit is a really impressive boom hit to get, so kudos for that too. But the next hit I do have a problem with. He's grabbing onto the chest piece, you can see here, and then he just extends his wrist, and then the neck breaks. And that's not a look you want to go for. That's a easy mode decap. I don't know what I would have preferred him to do, but just using that momentum snap with the chest and headpiece is just something that doesn't look the best. I think he might have been trying to make it look like he got that neck piece with the boom or something, but I really would have preferred him to use another option to get that neck piece broken. And then he drops into this pose here, which is really nice looking. So overall, this is a really, really solid manipulation replay. Only real problems I have with it is that his movement on the ground isn't the greatest here while he's doing the manipulation, but he's getting great hits, and you can spin really fast by the end of it. And I also don't like that neck break. But other than that, this is a very good replay. Our last replay for this episode is going to come from Stevie. This is a manipulation from him. I know him more for his tricking replays, which are very impressive. You should check those out if you have a chance. But this is him going into the manipulation madman sort of field. And since he's an experienced tricker, you can sort of see it there in that spin there. He knows how to move his Tori. It's just he's not used to this kind of replay. So let's get into it. This opener I have a little bit of a problem with. For one, I'm not a fan of 100 ED openers in general. I just think I usually prefer to have a guy move around a little bit before he starts getting into the replay, because that shows off your style a lot more than when you're actually moving. Because, theory time, when you're moving around for your opener, you don't really have a goal. So that means your style of movement really starts to show through. But when you are actually in the middle of making the replay, when you've started hitting uke, then you have to use efficiency. And by having to use efficiency, you have to sort of take away from your own style a little bit. So that's why I like higher ED openers, because it lets you show off your style and makes the replay your own a lot more. But he goes right into it and starts with this manipulation. One thing I don't like about it is that he sort of kicks the leg there, and that really doesn't do anything. You can see it just sort of makes you lean a little bit. And he uses that leg later to bring up that arm. But I would have preferred for him to just bring the leg straight up there instead of kicking the thigh first, because it doesn't really do much there. But he uses his hand and leg to sort of lift uke up, and then he punches the torso and kicks the leg to get his second hit. One thing I don't like here is that after this first lift, he sort of leans in and his elbow touches, and that's a move I don't really like to see in manipulations. I really like for it to be really clean and make sure you're almost always just your hands and feet are touching uke, to make sure that it's clear what's actually moving uke. So that second kick there is a lot more effective in my opinion. So he lifts uke up, then he does this really nice setup for his midair spin. I think that's definitely the best part of this replay. You can just see how well he sets this thing up. So he contracts his right knee there, and then he just uses every part of his body to make sure he gets as much lift as possible out of this jump. So he uses his right arm to sort of get a spin going, uses left leg to give a kick to give himself more momentum, and then he kicks off the ground with his right leg. And that's a really good setup. That's sort of showing his tricking expertise there, using every part of his body to make sure he gets a really good setup for the spin. And so he gets up into the air, starts off a little extended glute thing, and then brings in for a really nice looking spin into that split kick. And that split kick is really deep in that chest, you can see there. He gets 3k damage off it. It's ridiculous. But that's a really nice spin that he does there into a really nice kick. And then he gets that split and decap with his other leg, and then brings his then does the scissor kick sort of thing for the glutes. And you can see how he's moving really fast and getting every one of his kicks really deep inside uke, which isn't, in the case of the chest, I think it would have been better without him getting deep in there, because you can sort of see his foot get stuck in there, and you don't really want that when you're doing a quick combo like this. But in the case of the glutes here, it looks really nice. And then he lands into a really nice pose. So overall, this is a really nice replay. There are a couple of things he could have done better, I would have preferred more of a stylish opener, or maybe a little bit more of an efficient opener. And I think the hits could have been a little bit nicer. The first kick gets stuck inside uke, the second kick sort of only grazes the neck. and the third kick is nice. I'll give it that. So those are a few problems I have with this, but overall this is a really nice looking replay, and I liked it a lot. So that's it for today. I'm going to be making these videos every week for a long time now, I think. I don't think I'm going to miss it too often anymore. So just send in your replays. I still have a lot left over, but I prefer to use new replays because all the ones I have are like 3 months old. So even if you send me a replay in like 3 months ago when I was done, when I took my hiatus, then just send in a new one, because I know people like to get reviews on their newer replays rather than their older ones. So that's it for this week. See you guys.